During a time spent at the International Space Station, the Russian cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev experienced a temporal dilation that sent him 0.02 seconds into the future. Could this be proof that time travel is indeed possible? Although not as dramatic as depicted in fiction, it seems that space holds the key to such experiences. But we don't need to go that far. Here on Earth, there is no shortage of stories of people who allegedly traveled back in time from the future and witnessed how humanity progressed. And some of these accounts promise astonishing events for the 22nd century. Some cases are so detailed that it's hard to say they're lies, yet they are so compelling that deep down we hope they are real. And that's the situation of the boy Young Li Cheng, who lived in China before the 9th century AD and magically ended up in 1987. His story was supposedly told in a newspaper, starting when a police officer prevented the 10-year-old boy from being run over on the street, and something caught the authorities' attention. Young Li's clothes did not match the fashion of the late 80s. Since the child spoke a strange language, he was sent to an orphanage and stayed there for a long time until it became clear what he was speaking, ancient Chinese. It took the help of a professor who understood some of the language to try to decipher Young Li's story, with the boy saying he was the son of a man close to the Chinese emperor and had no idea how he ended up in that time. He read ancient scriptures in museums and recounted details of life centuries before, but of course, it wasn't easy to believe. And the biggest surprise came when the historian Ingrid Wingshall delved into historical studies to verify Young Li's stories. The description of events in the books was almost identical to what the child spoke. The historian even found a record with the date and time of birth of a boy centuries ago, possibly Young Li, and when his clothes were sent for analysis, the result proved that the fabric dated back to the 19th century. How was this possible? Unfortunately, these questions remained unanswered because the boy simply disappeared in 1988, a year after being found. Instead of giving up the case, the historian continued his research until he found a book that mentioned a certain Li Yong Chang. The name was different, but the account was very strange. According to the book, the boy emerged from a cave in the mountains claiming to have ended up in the future, where there were giant birds, houses that reached the sky, and a huge snake that crawled very fast. In other words, he saw airplanes, tall buildings, and possibly a fast train, but he was labeled as crazy and lost his life 3 weeks later. The most curious thing about these time travel stories is that it's difficult to piece together a historical panorama of all the events in the world. Sometimes it seems that in addition to traveling to another time, travelers also go to alternative realities. Have you ever thought about that? For example, in 2020, there was news that an American named Jack O. Rodson, 64 years old, lived for 3 months in 2069, and according to what he said, many things will happen on Earth in less than 2 centuries. Jack said he was part of a space-time experiment, a project with the sole aim of discovering if time travel was possible. And if what he said is true, then yes, breaking the barrier of time is indeed possible, and the evidence lies in Jack's accounts and the images he had on his phone. Apparently, the photos showed a futuristic Los Angeles with flying cars, extremely modern buildings, and red clouds in the sky. But perhaps the most frightening detail of his account was that he said the planet's atmosphere had changed because of global warming, in addition to technological advances and environmental problems. Jack also predicted that Donald Trump would be elected president of the United States again at some point, and that humanity would have survived the Third World War, a conflict so dangerous that all countries would participate. Jack also said that by 2069, North and South Korea would disagree, and humanity would live side by side with aliens because, my dear, beings from other planets would come to Earth and settle here, mainly in the United States and Asia. We only found out because Jack wanted to correct an error in the computer programming he carried. The device would be launched in 2022, but to fix it, it would be necessary to go back a few years to the time when it was being developed. Once that was done, he could return to 2069. But then was he lying or telling the truth while you think about that? Let me tell you a slightly different time travel case. And if, instead of being able to send someone through time, a machine could show past events, have you ever thought about seeing exactly what happened at the Last Supper, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? According to the case I'm going to tell you, this was once possible, but the device ended up being hidden by the Vatican to avoid falling into the wrong hands, called the chronovisor. This machine had a very strange design, with a cylindrical shape and an antenna made of an alloy of unknown metals, all so that they could receive signals of light and sound at all wavelengths. The chronovisor also had a kind of viewing tube and a 3-dimensional projector that would allow documenting past events. The main purpose of the device would be to legitimize biblical events with a privileged view of the events. There's only one problem in the middle of all this. There's no evidence that the machine really exists, at least concrete evidence, since a priest named Francois Bruno said the device is as real as you and I in his book, The New Mystery of the Vatican, from 2002. Francois explained that the development of the machine came from the mind of Father Pellegrino Hernetti, and that he only learned of the device in the early 60s, years after its construction. 12 scientists participated in the project, including the former Nazi scientist Erner von Braun. Braun and the Italian physicist Enrico Fermi, a scientist who helped develop the rocket that took humanity to the moon and the winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1938, were a heavyweight team eager to unravel the mysteries of time. According to Father Father Francois, he became aware of the chronovisor when he met Father Pellegrino on a boat trip along the Grand Canal in Venice at a certain moment. Francois would have said that there are several ways to interpret the Bible, and received as a response that Pellegrino could know the truth because he had access to a time machine. To define a specific period that the user would like to see, a kind of locator was placed that sent images to a screen while a recorder recorded filming. When the device was ready, the possibilities became almost infinite. Pellegrino said he saw the crucifixion of Jesus, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and even the foundation of the Roman Empire. Can you imagine all that? What would you like to watch? Think about it and tell me in the comments. The fact is that this whole story was published in Italy in 1972 in an article called "A Machine That Photographs the Past Has Finally Been Invented." The article even had a supposed photo of Jesus being crucified and said that Father Pellegrino kept an image of the Last Supper as a memento. Pellegrino continued to affirm that the chronovisor really existed until he died at 68 in 1994. The only problem was that the priest left no instructions on how to replicate the machine, which ended up discrediting the story. Pellegrino said he did not teach anyone because of Pope Pius XII, who allegedly forbade the disclosure of details due to the great danger of the machine. From then until now, several investigators have tried to debunk the story, saying that the photograph of Jesus was a montage, and even that the chronovisor looked like a machine from a science fiction work from the 40s. But none of this has been proven, and the device remains one of the great mysteries of the Vatican. Have we really been able to observe the past? I leave the answer to you. A big hug, and until the next video.